Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from nearly half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. This is Joe Saponari of CyMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigmont of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. We also offer a weekly email newsletter which includes show notes for each episode. Learn more at commandcontrolpower.com. And thanks for listening. This episode of Command Control Power is brought to you commercial-free and is made possible by our Patreon sponsors. You can help bring more commercial-free episodes by going to patreon.com/CMDCTRLPWR and supporting the show with a monthly pledge. Thank you for your support of Command Control Power.
All right, guys. Well, let me preface this by saying that I had a night out with a couple of friends not too long ago, a couple of old friends from high school. A friend that flew in from the Netherlands and I haven't seen in a while, and an old friend that lives just down the road in New Jersey. And we got to talking after, a couple of drinks, talking about life. And my one friend has what I'm a little bit jealous of life. And basically, essentially at the end of his workday, he goes home, he sits on his couch and does not think about work anymore at all for the rest of the night. And I thought, what a crazy concept.
Right.
So, this actually gnawed at me because we were talking for quite a while about this, and I was saying how I just don't have that separation, definitely as of the last couple of years, with everything being so condensed and mixed up together with COVID. But so I was kind of, it was gnawing at me. I was actually thinking, what a beautiful concept that can happen to somebody. But at the same time, it's not always realistic depending on your job type, of course. But I started to think about it because more and more as of late, and I'm thankful for the business. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like complaining that I'm busy. Well, yes, I am, but that's besides the point. But I'm sitting here thinking, what can I do to make this balance better for me? Because right now I'm at wit's end. Like I've just had, I think I've had a couple of rough weeks, whatever. And the aspect of having a rough day and then let's say 5, 6 or 7 o'clock, whenever you end your day, to know that it hasn't ended yet officially, because I might eat some dinner and then I'm just going to get back on my computer and I'm going to work well into the night. That makes it even harder for me to even address the fact that my day was so tough or bad or busy or whatever that day was. So I'm having a tough time with that personally, just thinking about I need to find a way to end that day, to stop and step away and do something else and not have my laptop literally on my lap at night. And that always be a secondary thing that I'm doing besides anything else, whether it's like, watching TV or talking to my wife or whatever. So I just became extremely frustrated, like as of today. So I was glad we were recording because I think I talked with a couple of colleagues about this, and of course talking with you guys, but I have to institute my own rule. And so I'm trying to figure out what that rule is going to be and how I'm going to, does it mean I start my day earlier when it's a little quieter, early in the morning before the 9 a.m. work bell hits, and I get a lot of stuff done so that by 6 or so, I can walk away thinking I can address some of this later or tomorrow morning as opposed to later. And I really feel like I need to institute a hard rule or else I'm going to go nuts. I'm just going to go nuts. That's what I wanted to put out there to you guys.
Well, you live in a very fluid environment, right? Like we all do. Some days are busier than others. But I think we need to explain to the audience that you have a lot more on your plate than maybe Joe or I do because you're doing training. So maybe just as much as you feel comfortable with, explain to our listeners the training aspect that you do that's part of your workload.
Yeah, those weeks are definitely harder, and thankfully they're not every week. But those trainings that, like for instance, for Jamf, they'll have me, depending on the time zone that I'm teaching in, I'll be 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, or sometimes Pacific, which is 12 to 8, which is super weird. I've become to love the 12 to 8 days because I work like 8 to 12 and get all this stuff done. And then I teach, which is actually not so bad, except when you end and it's like, everyone's getting ready for bed. But those days are especially tough. You're right, Jerry. Those are different. And I think maybe not everyone could relate to something like that. But I think for any one of us that's might had long days or tough projects, even without the teaching, on a regular day, I'm finding that I'm not stopping and creating a personal life for myself in the evenings. And I think it's starting to just basically hit a level that I'm realizing that I can't continue.
Well, I
And
want to
I just,
welcome you, Sam, to your 40s.
I'm
I,
past that, my
I
friend.
It's
remember when I
probably
hit
why,
40.
Joe.
Yeah,
He's gotten old.
It
yeah,
might be that. It might be.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I do think it's part of it. Like, I definitely remember things were different in my 20s and 30s, as far as like my level of energy and like how I could have like a long day and just not really need any recovery time. And, for that matter, go out after work and maybe have a few drinks and like really not again need any recovery time. And it just things are different as time goes on. But no, I think you're getting at something really important that probably should be talked about more, and I'm certainly going through something similar depending on the day. But I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said like some kind of separation, some kind of ending of the workday, and then like an alternative, something distinctly different, like the time when you have your personal life now, as opposed to it being just a continuum where they're both like interrelated. And in my experience, like I'll do personal things during the workday. I might be on the phone with a client, and then I might be like sending an email to a lawyer about a personal matter or whatever.
I want to hear about that personal matter with the lawyer.
Oh man, delinquent tenant situation that has
Oh,
been going on for over a year and a half. There's always little things to do, like personally, and so like sometimes I'm doing semi-personal things during the workday and back and forth, and of course the same in reverse on a Saturday when that's like my personal time. I might be doing some work also. To actually like firewall your time and have like, this is me time, this is personal time, this is time for my relationship, my family. That's really important, and it's hard to do because I think one of the advantages of working for ourselves is that we get to call the shots. We get to take care of things at whatever time we want, and we get to set our own hours. And but oftentimes that means it's like a paradox. Rather than having more control, we have less control, and it just becomes this big blur of like work.
there are a couple of things I can think of, like right off the bat. Like, for instance, I love getting stuff out of my inbox, right? So I prepare a lot of email replies. I set them using Send Later to have them go out in the morning. And that makes me feel good at night that my inbox is really at a minimal. But maybe I just need to leave those and address them in the morning. And that I don't have to spend the 20 minutes, half hour, or an hour, or whatever to respond to any number of emails that particular night. Like, that's one thing I think I could just get out of there if I can psychologically work my way around it. It does bother me to see all those messages in there. And then, like I said, I was talking to Craig, who I work with, and he was just like, I get in super early, I end my day at 6, and I leave my laptop at work. And I'm like, oh man,
Nice.
I need to leave my laptop upstairs, in my office,
Mm-hmm.
and that would at least, I don't know, maybe create some separation somehow. I got to do something, right? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Ending is good. I mean, like having a set time, and having that be a point of pride. Having it be, I'm free now. Like I close the laptop and I am free, almost to the point where your kids might be like, Dad, like leave us alone. We're playing. We're having fun. We're busy. Like where you're, it's like you might be around a little too much. If this goes according to plan. Could you practice that just in the same way that you enjoy clearing the inbox? You could enjoy closing the laptop.
Yeah, right. Doing something, physically, that action of doing that is rewarding in its own right to be able to walk away from that. So I
Sam,
don't
if
know.
you had to capsulize this work that you're doing, generally speaking, like what are you doing during those hours when you would rather be just relaxing, watching a little TV, interacting with one of your family members? Is it setting up work for the next day or for the following weeks, or is it answering clients that need your response within 24 hours? What's the bulk of it?
Definitely a lot of email responses, also some project proposals for some things that they need done. And the financial aspect of things I kind of push off to Jay, but at least like documenting some kind of proposal of what we want to do and timeline. Those are my times to get those out. Part of my issue too is I've realized this about myself over the years. I have trouble focusing on one particular task throughout a day. Like, I don't know about you guys. I'd love to find this out about other people, but like if I block out 9 to 11, I'm going to work on this remote task on a server. Nobody's watching, so I can take my time. I end up going in 20 different directions, not because I have to, but because I have trouble staying on one task. And that hurts my productivity as well, because I can't just do that within the 2-hour time frame and then move on to something else.
Oh
And I think
God, I can
that's
so relate to this.
yeah, can you? Because that also pushes me back. And I'm like, oh, wait, I never finished that server upgrade. I started at 9 a.m. and it's now 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. Oh man, I feel like I can relate so much. And here I was thinking you had it all like under control, and I was the only one struggling with with my workflow because I know you always you keep a clean inbox and like closing tickets and all this stuff. And here I was thinking, I'm the only one that goes through this. I go through the exact same thing. I'm the boss. I can be like, set aside the entire day to work on this one ticket, or something. Like if I wanted to, I have the time allocated. I have 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is. I've tried everything. And I sometimes have the same kind of thing happen where I'm supposed to be working on this one client, some kind of review and like recommend a bunch of new Macs or, recommend a new server or whatever. And I've got to like kind of focus on it and think about it. Think about what makes sense. I mean, the stakes are high when you're sending somebody a proposal and you're like, do this and you'll be happy, do this and your company will be functioning well. It's setting the bar pretty high that like we have to be right. I mean, if they buy what you say to buy, pay you whatever amount of time you're proposing you need to do this thing that's going to improve their life, you made a mistake in proposing it, you're going to feel bad, right? So I feel like the stakes are high. So I have to have like full focus and really put my attention on something. But then email pops up. I mean, this is what happens for me. It's probably similar for you. Like I got that ticket open. I'm looking at a list of their Macs and their specs and things like that. And I'm looking at the information I need is all in front of me. I might need to go to my email. What did I say to them about this? Like I gave them like a ballpark estimate of the time or something. Like, let me make sure I have that, to reference as well. And I go to my email app, right? And then at the top of my inbox, there's an email. What was that thing again you said, from a different client? So I click reply. Like
Nice.
I'm already not in control anymore. It's totally out of my hands right now. I'm clicking reply, no metacognition of like what I'm doing. I'm just clicking reply. And now I'm like, I can give them a quick answer and then I can file this email away and archive it,
Right.
Oh, wait, let's see. How can I answer this? I've got to actually search my sent. So I'm in the sent folder. I'm searching, and then I'm back in the email and a different email pops up. So I'm like, okay, better. Now I'm thinking about that one too. What was I even doing? Command tab. I call Command tab the like, what the heck was I doing shortcut? Command tab. Right. Okay, now I'm looking at Safari, except I clicked a link in Mail. So now I'm looking at the dashboard to notice that like a Unify thing is down, and then I've got to like let Tim know that this is down. I'm off doing, like you said, 20 things at once now that are not the thing that I'm actually like assigning to myself to do.
Right. Jerry, please tell me you're like this in some capacity.
No, because Jerry doesn't take on the work. Jerry just says no. He just says no. That's what I was going to say to you earlier, Sam. Just say no. When somebody says, I need help, you just say no. Then you're fine. Then it's okay.
It just all works itself out.
Yeah, I mean, I get diverted just as Joe described, and probably the same as most people that are listening. When these emails pop in, I like to get down to zero inbox, and I don't like when anything's remaining hanging. Circle back to working after hours. Because we are running our own businesses, you say to yourself, well, if I don't do this, who the hell's going to do this? I don't want to deal with this tomorrow. I need to get this done and prepared. So even if I have it sent out tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. using send later, I need to do this. The other thing that we have control of, but we don't want to resign ourselves over to saying like, well, maybe if I hired somebody, some administrative assistant, but then you're thinking, no, like if I do that, that's going to cost. And I don't have that discretionary income within my business to hire somebody else just to take some of the burden off of my shoulders. So you're always struggling with that. It's like, well, if I do it, it's going to get done and it's going to get done right. I don't have to pay anybody. I think that's just the name of the game. As Joe said, there is a time to save changes and shut down. Remember that from years ago?
Save changes. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a blast from the past. So, it's tough because you said the trade-off is maybe you could get up early in the morning, 5:30 or something like that, and bang some stuff out then as another alternative. So say like, I'm only going to work till 7:30, that's my cutoff. And then try to catch up on it first thing in the morning before you start your 9 a.m. How do you start your work at 9 a.m.? I'm going by 8 o'clock, maybe even earlier than that sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So you're saying this is the way? Like I have no, there's no chance.
I mean, if there is another way, it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Well, because
speaking of which, I'm putting it out there on the show. I am hiring. I could use some help. I'm looking for someone that's JAMP certified, JAMP 200 certified or better. So if you guys know anybody, if anybody listening to this show knows of anybody, I am definitely on the hunt. To your point, Jerry, that's going to cost me. For instance, this hire is going to help me specifically. We have a workload that we need fulfilled, but it's not like it's going to take a lot off my plate. It's probably going to help Matt out more than me.
Yeah. In my experience, it's going to add to your workload. I love my team, but it's not only a cost financially, it's a time cost. It's a new area of responsibility, no matter how you look at it. I mean, I'm still looking for that magic person to hire who's a clone of me or a clone of Tim or, a clone of one of us. Would just be able to be like completely self-directed. Even then, though, in a best case scenario, they have to kind of absorb through osmosis your style, your best practices. I don't care how well documented things are. For that person to get up to speed with like the way you work and the way your company works and how you might handle something or even just how to fix a particular tech issue. They're not going to know everything from day one. So even in a best case scenario, like there's going to be time involved that we need to spend with them to kind of coach them and kind of get them up to speed. And is that going to take 6 months? Is it going to take a concerted effort over 1 to 2 months? And then, maybe a little bit of coaching here and there for the next 6 months to a year. In any way you look at it, it's definitely going to take time and be a new area of responsibility. Of course, the hope is that it ultimately saves you time, because once they get up to speed, then you can just hand them tickets and have them solve things for you.
You know what? You guys didn't help at all. Because first of all, Jerry's telling me that this is just the way it is. And you're telling me if I hire someone, I have more work to do. Yeah, this is going the wrong direction.
Also, asterisk on the job offer. Standing offer is CIMAC will always pay you 10% more than what HCS will offer you. Joking. No. In all honesty, I need to find somebody as well at some point. What about remote, Sam? Are you looking for someone in your location? Or are you looking for somebody just fully remote?
I have some client stops that need to happen. And I'm wondering if I can figure that out with a remote employee. Like maybe Matt still has to go to them. I was trying to ease that off of Matt's plate. 2 or 3 clients are like an hour and a half away, and that really kind of sucks.
No, I mean, and it's all about the economy of scale. I think there's a certain sweet spot in our business model based on our market and our types of clients and things, but just based on also like our service that we offer at this scale. There's like an ideal structure. You have one admin and you have the boss, the person who's going to like probably write all the proposals and do a lot of the client like relationship management and stuff. And then you have consultants, and just having one full-time consultant or 2 full-time consultants, especially since like I'm a full-time consultant in my company, in addition to doing like all the other boss roles, it's not ideal. It's not enough. Like if you have 2 people who are both available to go on site, then you have backup. If you have, in my case, I'm fully remote, so that doesn't work for me. If you have 2 people, then when one person is out, the other person is doing 2x their normal job workload. But if you have 3 people, when one person's out, each of the 2 people are doing 50% more than the workload. That's the kind of the economy of scale of having like a certain number of people on staff, I think.
There are no easy answers. I mean, that's for sure. That's obvious. We just have to figure it out for ourselves. Talking through this with colleagues has definitely helped me start to create a plan, at least to make it alleviate some of what I'm going through. You can't make it perfect. It's work, right? I don't know about you guys, but if I didn't have to work, I probably wouldn't. So
right.
It is what it is. I do it because, in some degree, I do like what I do, thankfully, but I also do it because I have to. And I just got to figure out a better way to flop on the couch and do nothing for a night sometimes.
One of the themes here is multitasking, the concept of like the myth of multitasking. I first came across this term when some version of classic Mac OS started to support better multitasking or something like, what was it, like cooperative multitasking or something? Oh, multitasking, doing 2 things at once. Like I bet my brain can handle that. That's the secret to success. Like, let's just do everything all the time. For a computer, sure, like the processor is designed to do that. For a person, if you're listening to a podcast and driving, congratulations, you're multitasking successfully. But if you're like doing a server proposal and also like answering email, or like in my case, I'm on the phone with some client and I'm waiting for some progress bar, and They're telling me something about the problem at hand that I probably don't need to know about, but I'm still like taking it in one ear. I might be doing some email or texting with you guys or something. So that's kind of like technically multitasking, but I also call that multitaxing because I think it actually has a cost to your brain, cost to your nervous system in some way, where you're constantly subjected to multiple inputs and responsible for multiple outputs all at the same time. You're probably more tired after that than maybe doing those things sequentially. The trade-off is just that if you can get a little bit more done, where you don't have to like call someone after the phone call you're on, if you can just send a quick email, maybe you freed up some time to like take a break in between calls or something. So there's trade-offs. Clearly, it's not just cut and dry, like never multitask. The habit is to just multitask way more than we probably should effectively.
In any job, really, it doesn't just have to be what we do in IT. I mean, a lot of IT does lend itself to after hours work too. There's that aspect of things, but I do that a lot less these days. I think Matt on my team probably does more of the after hours reboots or server upgrades and things of that nature that require that, because he's he's a younger guy. He can do it. There's no special sauce for each individual person. I'm just trying to figure out what my approach is going to be, because I'm going to snap. And then I'll take it out on you guys.
Fair warning here, guys. Yeah.
I think one thing to look at is figure out what you need to clear on a monthly basis. This may sound too elementary. I mean, you may have a wife that works, or you may not have a wife that works. Figure out what your burn rate is, how much cash you need to bring in. Maybe you don't need to take on all the work that comes in the door. You can do referrals, maybe to a window shop or to Joe, or God forbid, somebody like myself. That would certainly cut down on some of the noise that you're experiencing. Are you overscheduled? Have you taken on too many clients?
That could be a part of it. Well, what do you guys think about that? Like, if you're getting referrals or new calls, like, aren't you ever concerned that the next one won't come in once you start turning them down?
To me, that question of like, maybe I'm taking on too many calls or like the wrong clients or something, that's an even harder problem to solve. I'm getting better at that over the years. Like we've talked about this on the show quite a bit about saying no and like kind of learning how to evaluate clients. I probably have a pretty high tolerance for like the types of clients I will willingly work for, and even some of the stuff I put up with from them. And we all do to some degree. And I think I've gotten better about like when I won't put up with stuff that's totally like unreasonable or unfair, and also trying to assess things that may not be profitable, like that require specialized skill for an extended period of time or something that's just not really scalable. It's just not worth the effort. It is good to say no to those things, but I feel like really, I don't know if that would solve it for me. Because I mean, the other thing too is like, Sam, you want to add somebody to your team. I mean, you're not going to do that by like taking fewer clients on, so how do you grow this kind of company without overtaxing yourself?
Maybe to Jerry's point, taking the right clients on, like maybe saying no to some that are just not a good fit, but you're taking them for the money. I've done that.
I think you mentioned this on the show, Sam. Didn't you recently take on a client that needed help desk support?
No, we almost did. That ended up not working out.
In listening to what you're talking about tonight, that would be a big red flag for me. Yeah. I mean, I would run away from that if I were you, and it sounds like you might have. You think you got problems now.
Yeah.
Start doing help desk support for a team of 25 or something like that. You want to talk about jumping off of a bridge.
That was even tougher because they wanted eventual 24/7 support.
Oh, gosh.
Wow. Yeah, that's... I mean, even if you hire somebody, you'd have to outsource the 24/7 part. You can't have somebody working off hours on your team or something. I mean, just for that, it's a tough thing. I mean, there's definitely like an urge to say yes to more work always. And I think that, you kind of build that muscle like in the early days and maybe never quite learn how to counter that. Or, I mean, I think through this show, we've practiced some intervention techniques to like help each other run away from the red flags, probably more so you guys helping me. That's one thing you can try to learn, but it's a really hard thing to say no when you do want to like scale your company. You do want to make more money. You want to be able to hire someone to take more of the burden off of you. You don't do that by like trimming the client base. Of course, as I say that, I'm questioning myself because maybe like taking on more of the best clients that you're getting paid by to do relatively simpler work, or getting paid to like manage and monitor things and not have to like put in the hours of FaceTime with them.
The bar is much higher for you guys because, I'm an army of one. And if I turn down a client, I don't have to worry about paying other people on my payroll. And I understand that it just completely changes the game when you have to worry about keeping these other people gainfully employed. It's a lot harder to turn down those clients that in your heart of hearts is a bad match because you need to keep everybody fed. And I get that.
It's a different level of responsibility to also have just a higher monthly expense to cover based on the payroll, but just worrying about the people, worrying about taking care of your employees. But there's a trade-off there too. So like one thing I get from having employees is I can take an actual vacation, I can be off. I was recently off for more than a week. I literally didn't open my Mac for more than a week. That's a big luxury, Yeah, it's huge. And like to get to the end of that time and to then think back and be like, I actually have no idea of the state of my company. I'm assuming it's fine. I don't know, in a good way. I didn't open my computer. I didn't see a single email really. I mean, I don't know. I looked at my phone. I'm sure I saw like random emails here and there, but I really wasn't in the loop, deliberately wasn't in the loop. And that's a huge thing you can get from having a staff. I don't think I could possibly do that if I was an army of one. In fact, I've been through that being an army of one, and I've returned voicemails from vacations I've been on and done remote support and just been worried about my clients during that time. To not have to worry about them when I'm off is great. It's a great trade-off, but it's also kind of a way of compartmentalizing what we've been talking about, having personal time, but I can like set that aside and firewall that for a week or sometimes more and not have to worry about the company because I know I have a team that I can rely on. I guess I'm wondering, Sam, from your perspective, like, could you do that for a day here and there? Or could you practice one day a week to start with? You just end at 6 no matter what's left undone.
I literally just talked to my wife about this. I'm like, all right, Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm not going to look at my laptop after this time. We'll see if it actually works. But it's all about self-discipline. And age probably does factor in. Like I'm getting a little bit more crotchety and, I just had a birthday. So that's all, pissing me off too. So, so you never know. I mean, like those things are probably playing a role. And I'm sure everyone has their own threshold. Some people might be listening going, well, I can work all night. That's not a big deal. I get it. I used to be able to do that. Now exactly. I'm just too pissed off to do it.
Yeah. Just get yourself a motorcycle. You'll feel better.
Midlife crisis?
Yeah.
That was what the Jeep was, Jerry.
It kind of varies by week too. I mean, it's nice to be able to say Mondays and Wednesdays, but I anytime I've tried to do that, and usually it is trying to be like, okay, I need an admin day on Mondays. I need to just like have the whole day, do those proposals, sweep my tickets and email and get back to clients and whatever, just have like the freedom to do that and not have scheduled appointments. But of course things come up. All right, of course I'll connect to that person. I'll take care of this. I'll take care of that. So it gets kind of eaten into, but I do try to set aside certain days to have a certain kind of like feel, certain kind of like workflow. But it also, of course, depends on what comes up. And I think this gets into this topic of the nature of our work. Being in a service business, is that just what we're talking about here? Does every plumber and electrician kind of just relate to what we're talking about here? That's just the nature of it? That's what we signed up for, is like a constant demand, constant random incoming requests. I mean, it's almost a way of like training your brain to be neurotic. If you can't predict when there's going to be a quote unquote fire alarm happening, you're living with a state of anxiety that somebody needs something right now, whether it's your fault or not, it's your responsibility. And that's kind of like the business we signed up for to some extent. So maybe it can vary week by week. It's like you see the way the day is shaping up. Today's the day I'm going to end at 5 or 6.
To your point, Joe, I do see my neighbor's an electrician, and I see his office light on into the evening as he's doing. And he tells me, he goes, "Oh man, I'm backed up on paperwork. I haven't invoiced this customer in 3 months. I did the work." I'm like, "Wow, that's a long time," but it happens. And he's an army of one as well. So, I understand that aspect of it. But like I said, we each have our own threshold. I just got to figure out my new one as I progress through this life we live.
I guess one last thing I wanted to bring up on this is going back to the multitasking. I think that's the nature of our business too, is like sometimes you click a thing and you have to wait for some indeterminate amount of time for a progress bar. And I'm not going to sit there and look at that progress bar. I'm going to try to find something else to do,
Right.
And so like you get right back in that cycle of like, what the heck was I doing? And that's when your server upgrade goes from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. because you're like, oh yeah, like I forgot to click restart because I was like waiting for like 20 to 30 to 40 minutes to like let something download, or less than a minute remaining.
Save changes and shut down.
Well, good luck, Sam. I know it's not easy. I've been there many times, and we can all relate. So thanks for sharing your plight that you're currently going through. And I'm sure we'll get some advice from listeners. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to an update from you soon. So keep us posted.
Just for the record, I will match any salary that Joe puts out there.
Oh no, we're in a bidding war on some unknown candidate already.
We'll see.
I'm surprised this hasn't come up on another show. And I never knew this before. I was actually doing a job for Joe. I was doing a remote job for Joe, chatting with a client. And one of the things that they were looking at was when they would hit reply all, Apple Mail wasn't honoring the reply all button. They'd hit reply all, and then it would create the new email to reply. It wouldn't be populated with the rest of the people who were in this initial message that they wanted to do a reply all to. Initially, I couldn't figure it out. And when I got the solution, I realized it was so obvious. That's normal and the expected behavior. But let's throw it to Sam. Sam, this email, there were a number of email addresses in this email that the client wanted to hit reply all, but it only replied with one email address. What was the catch here?
Was that the only email address in the two and everyone else was CC?
It didn't really matter.
So was there some kind of like malformed email address in there or something causing that?
This particular client had a number of email addresses all set up in the Apple Mail account for people who were referenced in this business under the same domain. So it was like jane@pretendco.com, bill@pretendco.com. They were all in this email. And when you hit reply all, because those email addresses are already...
Because those email addresses are configured in Mail app on that Mac, those inboxes appear.
Correct, Joe. Thank you. When you hit reply all,
it'll reply to the person who sent you the email and or like any third-party addresses that are there, but specifically not the addresses that are configured in Mail app on this machine. Because of the way this client works in Mail, they have the info address and the Jane address and the John address and whatever. All of those are on either all of their computers or several of their computers. So when John is sitting there replying to an email, he has Jane's address and info. Those two people are taken out of the reply addresses because Mail app is helping you out. It's doing you a favor. It's like, oh, you don't want to send an email to yourself, silly. I'll just take that address out, and you're like, why isn't it working? Yeah. So I had that once before when a husband and wife shared one user login in Mail on the Mac, their shared Mac in the house. They had both of their email addresses, in Mail app. And when they would both be on an email from their kid or whatever, one of them goes to reply all, doesn't copy the other one. Husband replies all, doesn't copy the wife. And so I learned that 5, 6, 7 years ago. Wait a minute, really? And there's no preference for this? There's no way you can say, like, don't try to do the smart thing, Mail, just do the normal dumb thing, that is actually going to be better. There's no, like, set defaults, blah, 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 0. It's just like, no, Mail app is programmed to be smart. So, yeah.
Yeah, and while I was doing this support, I reached out to Joe, and Joe knew the answer right away. And I'm like, I'm surprised this never has come up. I didn't know that, I had no idea.
I never would have a million years guessed that. You quizzed me on that, and I'm like, I don't fucking know. Never would I have guessed that the accounts were set up on that device, and that's why I didn't reply to them.
It's the craziest thing, yeah. And that's the expected behavior.
Right. And it's one of those things you have to see, when a client tells you, because otherwise they're just like, the reply all is not working. You're like, that's weird. Let's take a look. You're not going to get the info from them unless they're like really observant and they notice like it only doesn't work when it's like the people that happen to be configured in Mail where there you go. There's your answer. That was a weird one.
Speaking of things you have to see, I had a job over the weekend and I shared this with Joe. It frustrated the hell out of me. And it was a terrific job. I upgraded an iMac to a solid state drive. The client actually purchased a Samsung Evo 4 terabyte drive to put in this 27-inch iMac, so good on him. So I did the work. I transferred it took me hours just to take the stuff that he had on this 2 terabyte drive and put it on the Evo. And it was a Fusion drive. And of course, that made it even slower. to transfer the data. And we may have mentioned this on another show, but if you're ever upgrading an iMac specifically with an SSD drive from a Fusion drive, you need to copy the data onto the new drive without removing anything from that iMac and copy it over. Because once you break the Fusion drive by removing it, that data is gone, and that whole relationship of the internal SSD, the small SSD that's inside the iMac that marries with the rotational drive, becoming the Fusion drive. If you try to take apart the iMac and then transfer the data, it doesn't work, of course.
Right, which makes sense, but the data isn't actually gone, right? I mean, like, you could retrieve it if you have to.
No, it shows up if you connected the rotational drive without the Fusion component to it. It doesn't recognize any data on it at all. It looks like nothing.
It's a little scary.
It is a little scary, and I went through that. You only make that mistake once, and of course, I was able to pop everything back in. It was a highly profitable job. Buttoned it up for the guy. Thing was working fantastically well, and I returned it to him. And I get a call a couple hours later after I had dropped off the iMac because I was in his neighborhood and I was happy to do it. And he said, "I can't connect my iMac to the internet." What? And so during the course of me doing upgrades for him, he had a couple unnecessary things, startup extensions that they weren't using. And one of the crazy things he had on there was Norton Web Security. I'm like, this is garbage. You don't want to have this on here. It's just going to slow down your machine. So Norton Web Security has an uninstaller. So I ran the Norton Web Security tool. It removed Norton. It wasn't persistent in the Finder menu and see the web security, and it was gone, right? I had connected this computer to the internet wirelessly, and that's how he was connecting it back in his office. He said he couldn't get it to connect. So I went through all kinds of troubleshooting with him over the phone, and I couldn't connect to the computer. I couldn't see the computer to try things. He only had the possibility of connecting via Wi-Fi, which he wasn't able to connect to. This reminded me of this story when Joe said you got to see things. And so we're just like going around 45, 50 minutes. And now I think any profit that I made on this job was completely eaten up by this free session that he's spending with me trying to figure out why his stupid computer can't get on the internet. Well, the Norton uninstaller tool did not remove all of its tentacles that it had put into the operating system. And we discovered that in the network preference pane, which I had him look at several times, there was another entry under Wi-Fi that said something to the effect like Norton Security or something like that. So there's actually a network preference pane instance that Norton Web Security installs when it's running on your Mac. And for some reason, the uninstaller didn't strip that out. So as soon as he highlighted it, hit the negative sign, boom, he was instantly connected. Isn't that the craziest thing?
That reminds me of one I had that was very similar and, trying to troubleshoot it remotely. I can't remember if they did a software upgrade or something. And after the upgrade, they just didn't have internet. Through troubleshooting, again, remotely, I think this was during COVID even, I had them do a safe boot. That's it. You fixed it. You're a genius. I'm like, I didn't even know you were going to test it. I didn't even care if it works in a safe. I mean, I cared, but that wasn't even the primary thing, but okay, wow, it's working in a safe boot. This is crazy. All right. Well, that at least helps me narrow it down. I'm thinking it's some kind of, third party extension or whatever, but we checked there. We didn't see anything. They rebooted after a safe boot. It was still working. This is even weirder, but I did find that then since I was able to connect, I found that there was some kind of, I forget actually where it was, but it was like an Intego component or something. And it kind of reminds me of and it was like an internet filter, content filter thing. So it was some lingering component that was there that because the rest of the software was no longer active, I think it was like a proxy that was trying to hand off the traffic to some other component that was no longer there. Kind of reminds me of the Norton thing too.
Yeah, it just makes you so angry when you find something like that off in left field, and it's some janky piece of software that some company has made part of their.
Just bad software. I mean, it's bad software is so frustrating. Yeah. Ugh.
Son of a bitch.
Of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where